So it says, sacrifice and meal offering you did not desire. You have opened my eyes. And that's actually the key to what's going on. Burnt offering and sin offering you did not ask for. Okay? Psalm 51 says, O Yehovah, open my lips, and that my mouth might declare your praise. For you do not desire sacrifice, or I will give it. You do not delight in burnt offering. Again, this is David. The sacrifices of Elohim are a broken spirit, a heart broken and crushed. O Elohim, these you do not despise. Okay, so is this all he wants? Do good in your good pleasure to Zion. Build the walls of Jerusalem. Then you would delight in sacrifices of righteousness, in burnt offering and complete burnt offering. Then bulls would be offered on your altar. So the problem isn't the offerings. The problem is the state of mind that the people are in when they're offering the offerings. What he wants is people like this. These are the people he wants to come to him. And this is actually the key to the new covenant as well, which we'll see in the book of Hebrews. It was all about people coming in repentance with better promises. To Israel, who were just living in the land, they would offer things, they would do their religious bit, and they'd offer their sacrifices and offerings, but they would do it within a certain context, which we'll see. So Proverbs 15:8-9 says, the sacrifice of the wrong ones is an abomination to Yehovah, but the prayer of the straight is his delight. The way of the wrong one is an abomination to Yehovah, but he loves him who pursues righteousness. So the last thing that he wants is people who go about in their lives committing sin, turning their ear from hearing the things that he says, who then come and bring sacrifices to him as ways to draw near to him. It's not acceptable to him. That's an abomination to him to try and draw near to him in that state. Amos 5:21-26 says, I have despised your festivals, and I am not pleased with your assemblies. Though you offer me burnt offerings and your grain offerings, I do not accept them, nor do I look on your fattened peace offerings. Now they would be great things in the right context. But these people, when you think of the Torah movement today, they're doing the feasts, but they won't submit to certain parts of the Torah. They say, no, that's too difficult. We cannot do it. Take away from me the noise of your songs. I do not hear the sound of your string instruments. Singing songs to Yehovah is great. We'll see that. It's brilliant. He loves it in the right context. Okay, if you are righteous and you come before him and you sing to him, he loves that. But the people who are just assembling in his name, but they will not submit to the Torah. People who are doing the feasts, but will not submit to the Torah. And when I say submission, I mean total submission, total surrender, which is something we'll look at in the final part. Sing songs to him, but they're not surrendered to him. It's an abomination to him. He wants nothing to do with it. Let judgment roll on like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. You brought me sacrifices and meal offerings in the wilderness for 40 years, O house of Israel. But you took up Succoth, your king, and Kiyun, your idols, your astral gods, which you made for yourselves. Okay, so you were more interested in your idols. Yeah, you kept the festivals, you sang songs, you did this, you did the other. But when it came to it, you had idols, things that you cherished above me and above my commands. Isaiah 1:10-20 says, hear the word of Yehovah, you rulers of Sodom. Give ear to the Torah of our Elohim, you people of Amorah. So he's comparing the rulers and the people in Israel to the rulers and people of Sodom and Gomorrah. Of what use to me are your many sacrifices, declares Yehovah. I've had enough of your burnt offerings of rams and the fat of fed beasts. I do not delight in the blood of bulls or of lambs or of goats. Not on its own. Not when it's brought out of the context of someone being submitted to him and trying to draw close to him. Just bringing offerings, that was what the pagans did. They did that to their gods. We'll appease our God. Yehovah's not interested in any of that. He doesn't delight in the blood of bulls. He's not like, oh great, you've brought me some bull blood. What he wants is our obedience. He wants us to be following the Torah. And when we're following the Torah, we will bring these things, and it will be part of our obedience and part of our submission to him. And in that context, he delights in them. When you come to appear in my presence, who has required this from your hand to trample my courtyards? Stop bringing futile offerings. Incense is an abomination to me. Chodashim and Sabbaths, the calling of meetings. I am unable to bear unrighteousness and assembly. If you're assembling in his name, you're meeting on Shabbats, you're celebrating the Chodashim before him, but it's in the wrong context. He wants nothing to do with it. He doesn't want you to associate his name with yourself because you're in disobedience. My soul hates your Chodashim and your appointed times. They are a trouble to me, and I am weary of bearing them. And when you spread out your hands, I hide my eyes from you. Even though you make many prayers, I do not hear. That's how they would have prayed, isn't it? With their arms outstretched. And he says, I don't hear that. Your hands have become filled with blood. Wash yourselves, make yourselves clean. Put away the evil of your doing before my eyes. Stop doing evil. Learn to do good, seek judgment, reprove the oppressor, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. Come now and let us reason together, says Yehovah. Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be white as snow. Though they are red, like crimson, they shall be as wool. That shows his great mercy, doesn't it? These people who came before him in this state, who profaned his name in the sight of the nations, he said, come, let us reason together. Though your sins be like scarlet, they will be white as wool. If you submit and obey, you shall eat the good of the land. But if you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured by the sword, for the mouth of Yehovah has spoken. So this is all he wants at any point. He takes no pleasure in the death of the wicked. He just says, just turn, just stop doing that. What are you doing? Jeremiah 14 verse 12 says, when they fast, I do not hear their cry. When they offer burnt offering and grain offering, I do not accept them. So that's the issue. It's not accepted before him. Okay, of course, when you fast, he hears your cry. But if you're righteous, if you're doing it in righteousness, not if you're doing it in unrighteousness. Amos 4:4-5 says, come to Bethel. Bethel is the house of God. That's what it means. And transgress. To Gilgal, increase transgression. Bring your sacrifices every morning, your tithes every 3 days. Burn an offering of thanksgiving with leaven. We saw that it's not to be offered with leaven. Proclaim voluntary offerings loudly, for you have loved this, you children of Israel. People do, don't they? They'll come, they'll bring their offerings, they'll bring their tithes to Yehovah, and they'll think, this is it, this is my righteousness before him. Because I do these things, therefore I am righteous. Like the righteous Pharisee in Luke 18. We'll read about him later. You have loved this, you children of Israel. Why? Because it's easy to do that. Well, it's easier to do that. I'll do my religious bit, go to church, we'll meet on Shabbat, and then I'll go about my life. And I've got all of these areas in my life that I've not submitted to him. But it's okay, because I am well respected among men. I take all my offerings and all my tithes. Hosea 5:5-6 says, and the excellency of Israel shall witness to his face, and Israel and Ephraim stumble in their crookedness, in their avon. Yehudah shall also stumble with them. With their flocks and herds, they go to seek Yehovah, but they do not find him. Isaiah 56:4-7. For thus said Yehovah, to the eunuchs who guard my Sabbaths and have chosen what pleases me and hold fast to my covenant. Remember, we've seen in the Torah before, the eunuchs and the sons of certain of the nations were not to be part of the leadership of Israel. Anyone who had been emasculated was not to be in leadership. Somebody who was from an enemy nation, until it had become a certain generation of that person, was not to be in leadership. But he says, look, to these people, if they guard my Sabbath, they've chosen what pleases me, they hold fast to my covenant, to them I shall give in my house and within my walls a place, a name better than that of sons and daughters, because the people in the land weren't doing those things. But he says, look, if there are people in the world who do those things, to them I give a place better than that of sons and daughters. I give them an everlasting name that is not cut off. Also the sons of the foreigner who join themselves to Yehovah to serve him, and to love the name of Yehovah, to be his servants, and to guard all who guard the Sabbath, not profane it, hold fast to my covenant, them I shall bring to my set apart mountain, and let them rejoice in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices are accepted. Because that's the state you've got to be in for it to be accepted, for you to actually draw near to his holiness. For my house is called the house of prayer for all the peoples. Now this is quite a good verse for just what we're talking about. The sacrifices and offerings are not acceptable to him, showing the ones that they are. But I actually include this verse because, as I said at the beginning, what I want to go on and talk about is this third temple which is being made in Israel at the moment. And what they're saying is that it is this house of prayer for all the peoples, that all the nations can come to this temple. And it sounds very grand and glorious, and I'm sure the people who are involved in doing the temple service are all lovely people, and they just really want the nations to know their God, and they really want their God to come and dwell in the midst of them like he hasn't for so long. I'm sure that that's what's in their hearts. As for the temple, we need to be wise and we need to understand what's going on, because if it's a legitimate temple, we need to be going there and offering sacrifices. I am zealous for the temple to exist in Israel, because that will be a glorious thing, because on that day, Yehovah will be dwelling in the midst of Israel, and that will be an amazing, amazing thing. But that time is not yet. So this is a picture from the dedication of the altar, okay? I think that they did it on Hanukkah as well, as, you know, the rededication of the temple. So these are the people that have been selected to serve as Levites. And I just want to show you a video of that dedication service, because you will probably be able to tell for yourselves when we watch it that something is wrong. Oh. There you go. Let's try. so, if that actually was, turn this down, if that actually was the temple, they would be very guilty before Yehovah of profaning his holy objects. They had the golden altar of incense just out there in public. The altar which if you touch, you are made holy, all that sort of stuff. And they're there doing all of their stuff with like a plastic box and stuff. But as I say, I'm not going to offer my opinion on this. I'm going to look at what Scripture says about a temple being instituted, because it's a major thing, isn't it, for Yehovah to come and dwell in the midst of a people. For him to do that, the people have to be in a certain condition, and it has to be according to what is prophesied about that happening, and all sorts of things. But we'll look at the criteria that are needed for the temple. Okay, Acts 7 verse 44 says, "The tent of witness was with our fathers in the wilderness, as he appointed, instructing Moshe to make it according to the pattern that he had seen." Very important that this is done. Okay, when the temples are made, the people are shown a pattern, a very precise pattern. And it's a very precise pattern because it's made after the temple that is in heaven. So the exact instructions and the exact way that everything is made has to be done exactly so that it actually reflects what it's a picture of. Exodus 25, 8-9 says, "And they shall make me a set apart place, and I shall dwell in their midst, according to all that I show you, the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furnishings. Make it exactly so." Exactly. You've got to make it exactly so. Hebrews 8, 4-5 says, "For if indeed he were on earth, he would not be a priest, since there are priests who offer gifts according to the Torah, who serve a copy and shadow of the heavenly, as Moshe was warned." Okay, it says that he was warned of those things. Make it exactly so was a warning. "When he was about to make the tent, for he said, see that you make it according to the pattern shown to you on the mountain." This is not a temple that is made according to a pattern that anyone has been shown. What this is a bunch of people deciding we're going to go back to the land, we're going to dwell in the land, and then what we're going to do is we're going to make a building, and then we're going to tell Yehovah to come and dwell in the building. That's not how it works. You see, a large part of Judaism is the idea that the Torah is not in heaven. And that means that the rabbis therefore have control over the Torah and over the scriptures so that they can dictate how things happen. So to them, it just doesn't seem very odd that they've decided to do all these things for themselves, and they've decided, we'll build a house and then Yehovah will come and he'll dwell there, obviously, if we build the house. Exodus 31, 1-6 says, "And Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, see, I've called by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Cher, of the tribe of Yehudah. And I filled him with the spirit of Elohim in wisdom and in understanding and in knowledge and in all work, to make designs for work in gold and in silver and in bronze, and in cutting stones for setting and in carving wood and to work in all work. And I have appointed him with him, Aholiab, son of Achisamach, of the tribe of Dan. And I have put wisdom in the hearts of everyone who is wise-hearted, and they shall make all that I have commanded you." So how did they make these furnishings? They made them by the Spirit. And I would bet you that the Spirit would not be telling anyone to come with a giant Tupperware tub full of meat to burn on an altar, which is just out in public as the dedication of the altar. And in fact, the Jewish people cannot receive the Ruach because they have defiled their hearts by setting up idols in their hearts, okay, or Judaism and all that sort of stuff. Everyone, needed Yeshua to cleanse our conscience, okay, to fulfill the role of the red heifer in the realm of the conscience, to cleanse our hearts so that the Ruach could come and dwell with us. These people don't have the Ruach. They certainly weren't inspired by it to make the temple. They were inspired by the fact that they wanted Yehovah to come and dwell in their midst. Well, if they've got other motives, they've got other motives, but that's what they present. David was also shown the pattern for the temple. Okay, but David wasn't allowed to build the temple. in 2 Samuel 7, it says, and it came to be when the king was dwelling in his house, and Yehovah had given him rest from all his enemies all around, that the king said to Nathan the prophet, see, now I am dwelling in a house of cedar, but the ark of Elohim dwells in curtains. So he was concerned. He was saying, look at my grandiose house, but the king of the universe is dwelling in a tent. Nathan said to the king, go do all that is in your heart, for Yehovah is with you. And it came to be that night that the word of Yehovah came to Nathan, saying, go and say to my servant David, thus said Yehovah, would you build a house for me to dwell in? But I have not dwelt in a house since the time that I brought the children of Israel up from Mitzrayim, even to this day, but I have moved about in a tent and in a tabernacle. Wherever I have walked with all the children of Israel, have I ever spoken a word to anyone from the tribes of Israel, whom I commanded to shepherd my people, Israel, saying, why have you not built me a house of cedar? In other words, do you not think that if I wanted a house, I'd have asked for one? And the situation is the same today. 1 Chronicles 28, 2-20, it says, then King David rose to his feet and said, hear me, my brothers and my people. I had it in my heart to build a house of rest for the ark of the covenant of Yehovah and for the footstool of our Elohim, and have made preparations to build it. But Elohim said to me, you do not build a house for my name, because you have been a man of battle and you have shed blood. I don't know the history of the people that they've got to build the temple, but you've got to be the precise people that Yehovah calls to that task and empowers by his Ruach to design it exactly as the temple in heaven is, after that pattern. Yet Yehovah Elohim of Israel chose me above all the house of my father to be king over Israel forever. He has chosen Yehudah to be the ruler, and of the house of Yehudah, the house of my people, and among the sons of my father, he was pleased with me to make me reign over all Israel. And of all my sons, for Yehovah has given me many sons, he has chosen my son Shlomo to sit on the throne of the kingdom of Yehovah over Israel. And said to me, Shlomo your son is the one to build my house and my courtyards, for I've chosen him to be my son, and I myself am a father to him. So he says, this person, not you, you're not suitable, your son, someone else. This person, precisely this person. It's not happened in this case. And I shall establish his kingdom forever, if he is strong to do my commands and my judgments as it is this day. And that's interesting to me. He says, look, I'm going to be his father. He's going to be my son. I'll establish his kingdom forever if he obeys me. So you can be made the son of the Most High. Yeah, it depends on your obedience to him, what the outcome is. It says, and now before the eyes of all Israel, the assembly of Yehovah, and in the hearing of our Elohim, guard and seek the commands of Yehovah your Elohim, so that you possess this good land and leave it as an inheritance for your children after you forever. As for you, my son Shlomo, know the Elohim of your father and serve him with a perfect heart and with a pleasing life. For Yehovah searches all hearts and understands all the intent of the thoughts. If you do seek him, he is found by you. But if you forsake him, he rejects you forever. Seek now, for Yehovah has chosen you to build a house for the set-apart place. Be strong and do it. A house for the Holy of Holies. And David gave his son Shlomo the plans for the porch and its houses and its treasuries and its upper rooms and its inner rooms and the place of atonement, and the plans for all, again, that he had by the Spirit. We see that in both cases. We do not see that with the temple that they are building in Israel. It is a work of man. It's not Yehovah's work. Of the courtyards of the house of Yehovah, and of all the rooms all around, and of the treasuries of the house of Elohim, and of the treasuries for the set-apart gifts, and for the divisions of the priests and the Levites, and for all the work of the service of the house of Yehovah, and for all the vessels of service in the house of Yehovah, even by gold by weight, for utensils of gold, for all utensils used in every kind of service, for silver, for all utensils of silver by weight, for all utensils used in every kind of service. It was given by a precise weight, and the plans for them were very, very precise. And by weight for the lampstands of gold and their lamps of gold, by weight for each lampstand and its lampstands, for the lampstands of silver by weight for the lampstands and its lamps according to the use of each lampstand. Buy weight gold for the tables of showbread for each table, and silver for the tables of silver. Clean gold for the forks and the basins and the jars of clean gold and the golden bowls. And weight for every bowl, and for the silver bowls, silver by weight for every bowl. And plastic by weight for the tub of plastic that they bring the offerings in. It's just nonsense, isn't it? Refined gold by weight for the altar of incense. Do you think that this was done in the altar of incense that they just had standing out in the open? And for the pattern of the chariot of the gold cherubim, spreading out their wings and covering the ark of the covenant of Yehovah. Yehovah made me understand all this in writing, by his hand upon me, all the works of these plans. He was given the actual plans. Okay? He didn't come to the Torah, see what was spoken to Moses in part, and then take a Jewish holy book called the Mishnah and try and get instructions from that on how to build the temple. The temple is an illegitimate temple. It's not built according to the pattern. And David said to his son Shlomo, be strong and courageous and do it. Do not fear, nor be afraid, for Yehovah Elohim, my Elohim, is with you. He shall not leave you nor forsake you. It'd be quite a promise. Until you've completed the work for the service of the house of Yehovah. Oh. What happens then, David? 1 Kings 6, 11-13. And the word of Yehovah came to Shlomo, saying, this house which you are building, if you walk in my laws and do my judgments and shall uphold all my commands and walk in them, then I shall confirm my word with you, which I spoke to your father David. And you shall dwell in the midst of the children of, and I shall dwell in the midst of the children of Israel, and not forsake my people Israel. So what's needed for him to come and dwell in the midst of the children of Israel? That they are following all of his commands. They're not living in abomination. Tel Aviv is the LGBTQ capital of the world. One of the actual few things that Yehovah says, this is an abomination before me. And they've made it the capital of the world. So he's not going to come and dwell in the midst of the children of Israel. Certainly not a people who have not come into covenant with him, been cleansed by Yeshua's blood. Exodus 40, 34-35. And the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of Yehovah filled the tabernacle. And Moshe was not able to come into the tent of meeting because the cloud dwelt on it, and the glory of Yehovah filled the tabernacle. This is when the altar was lit. Did anyone notice in the video that they couldn't stand because the presence of Yehovah was so great? It's not a place where he's coming to dwell. 1 Kings 8, 10-11 says, and it came to be when the priests came out of the set-apart place that the cloud filled the house of Yehovah again, same things happening. So that the priests were unable to stand and perform the service because of the cloud, for the esteem of Yehovah filled the house of Yehovah. It's not going to be the case in Israel. We didn't see any of this at the dedication of the altar. Exodus 33 shows us the importance that his presence is there in order for them to know that they have been set apart by him from the other nations. It says, and Moshe said to Yehovah, see, you are saying to me, bring up this people, but you have not made known to me whom you would send with me, although you have said, I know you by name, and you have also found favor in my eyes. And now please, if I have found favor in your eyes, please show me your way and let me know you, so that I find favor in your eyes, and consider that this nation is your people. Okay, so what's going to be the sign that that nation is his people? And he said, my presence does go, and I shall give you rest. And he said to him, if your presence is not going, do not lead us up from here. For how then shall it be it known that I have found favor in your eyes, and I and your people, except you go with us? Then we shall be distinguished, I and your people, from all the people who are on the face of the earth. Not just some people who may trace their genetics back to the original people, Israel, who've just decided for themselves. We'll go back to the land and we'll build a house, and then Yehovah will come and he'll dwell in our midst. Well, before all the prophecy says that the actual people of Yehovah, Israel, who are submitted to him, will be taken back. Exodus 20:25 says, and if you make me an altar of stone, Do not build it of cut stone, for if you use your chisel on it, you have profaned it. Does anyone see a problem here? They would say, we didn't use a chisel on it. We cast it out of concrete. They're concrete bricks. Just showing the same thing that you always see. Like if you ever read like writings of the Jewish sages or anything like that, they always miss the obvious spiritual things. They completely don't know what to say about a bride being chosen for Isaac, because it's a bride for Yeshua. That's what it's a picture of. So the commentaries will just be blank on a bride chosen for Isaac. When it comes to don't use your chisel on the stone, let it be unhewn stone, natural stone. That's what you should make the altar out of, or earth, just the things that Yehovah has created. They miss why. So they think, oh, it's okay, we've built it out of concrete. We've got bricks, but they're made out of concrete. Missing that it's just all about man. This couldn't be any more of a symbol of what they're doing if they tried. Leviticus 9:23-24 says, and Moshe and Aharon went into the tent of meeting and came out and blessed the people. The glory of Yehovah appeared to all the people. This is what we saw before. The fire came out from before Yehovah and consumed the burnt offering and the fat on the altar, and the people saw and cried aloud and fell on their faces. Okay? They didn't come with a box of matches and light a big pile of pallets that was on top of the altar. 2 Chronicles 7 verse 1 says, and when Shlomo had ended praying, fire came down from the heavens and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices. This is what you would expect to see. Now, if we did see fire coming down from the heavens to light the altar, I would ask people to consider what is discussed in this teaching about whether or not that would legitimize what we see in the temple. There's a whole load of other stuff which makes the temple illegitimate. But as for why fire might come down from heaven, I'd say for people to watch this. It's a 16-minute teaching. Ezekiel 9, 1-10 says, and he called out in my hearing with a loud voice, saying, let the punishers of the city draw near, each with his weapon of destruction in his hand. So this is about Yerushalayim. So I want you to, as we're reading through this, think to yourselves, have we ever seen something else like this in history? Okay, this was the destruction of Solomon's temple, and them being taken into exile in Babylon was the fulfillment of this. And look, 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with his battle axe in his hand. And one man in their midst was clothed with linen, and had the writer's inkhorn at his side. And they came in and stood beside the bronze altar. And the esteem of Elohim of Yisrael went up from the keruv, from the cherub, where it had been, to the threshold of the house. And he called to the man clothed with linen, who had the writer's inkhorn at his side. Yehovah said to him, pass on into the midst of the city, into the midst of Yerushalayim, and you shall put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and cry over all the abominations that are done with it. Now, without going into all of the spiritual beings and all of that sort of stuff, these 6 men are spiritual beings. The one that is clothed in linen is one of Yehovah's angels. Okay, they've come to bring judgment on the city, though. Yehovah's angel, he says to him, you, the one clothed in linen, you go in and you put the mark on their foreheads. Now we know that history and that the future will be cyclical from the word. Okay? This very event that we're going to read about now has happened again in history, but this will happen again. We know in Revelation that the 144,000 have the mark put on their foreheads. And to the others he said in my hearing, pass on into the city after him, smite, do not let your eye pardon nor spare. Bear in mind, this is the children of Israel. Slay to destruction old, young men, maidens, children, and women, but do not come near anyone upon whom is the mark, and begin at my set apart place. So they began with the elders who were in front of the house. And again, as we've covered before, the idea that when he said, kill the men, the women, and the children, was because they were Nephilim, just doesn't stand up to a search of Scripture. This is Israel. They weren't Nephilim. And he said, go and kill them because they're not righteous. And he said to them, defile the house and fill the courts with the slain. Go out, and they went out and smote in the city. And as they were smiting them, It came to be that I alone was left, and I fell on my face and cried out and said, Our master Yehovah, are you destroying all the remnant of Israel and pouring out your wrath on Jerusalem? Notice what he says, defile the house, fill the courts of the house with the slain that Solomon's just spent all this time building, this is hundreds of years later, and kill all of the people. So again, I want you to be thinking of a time in history when loads of people were killed in Jerusalem and they went in and defiled the temple. He said to me, the crookedness of the house of Israel and Yehudah is exceedingly great, and the land is filled with bloodshed, and the city filled with that which is warped. For they say, Yehovah has forsaken the land, and Yehovah is not seeing. But as for me, my eye shall not pardon, nor would I spare. I shall recompense their deeds on their own head. Okay, so can anyone think of that time in history when that's happened? How about this in 70 AD? Okay? Everything is cyclical, as Charlie reminds us. Ezekiel 10 verse 4 says, the esteem of Yehovah went up from the cherub over the threshold of the house, and the house was filled with the cloud, and the court was filled with the brightness of the esteem of Yehovah. Ezekiel verse 11, all of this has been in progressive chapters of Ezekiel. And the Spirit of Yehovah fell upon me and said, speak. Thus said Yehovah, thus you have said, O house of Israel, for I know what comes up in your spirit. You have increased your slain in the city and filled its streets with the slain. Therefore, thus said the Master Yehovah, your slain, whom you have laid in its midst, they are the meat, and this city is the cooking pot. But I shall bring you out of the midst of it. You have feared the sword, and I bring a sword upon you, declares the Master Yehovah. And I shall bring you out of its midst, and give you into the hands of strangers, and execute judgments on you. So now this is to a different people. When the house of Yehudah were taken into Babylon, there was a prophecy that said that they would come back in 70 years. When the house of Yehudah were removed from the land in 70 AD, there is prophecy that tells them when they will come back to the land, and it is not now. By the sword you fall, at the border of Israel I judge you, and you shall know that I am Yehovah. This city is not your cooking pot, nor are you the meat in its midst. At the border of Israel I judge you. And you shall know that I am Yehovah, for you have not walked in my laws or executed my judgments, but have done according to the rulings of the Gentiles, which are all around you. Think of Tel Aviv again, the gay capital of the world. It came to be when I was prophesying, the Pelityahu, son of Benaiah, died. I fell on my face and cried out with a loud voice and said, Our Master Yehovah, are you making an end of the remnants of Israel? Then the word of Yehovah came to me, saying, Son of man, your brothers, your relatives, your kinsmen, and all the house of Israel, all of it, are those about whom the inhabitants of Jerusalem said, Keep far from Yehovah, this land has been given to us as a possession. Therefore say, thus said the Master Yehovah, although I have sent them far off among the Gentiles, and although I have scattered them among the lands, yet I was for them a set-apart place for a little while in the lands to which they came. Okay, so think of us. We're scattered in the nations, whether we turn out to be descendants of the house of Israel, or we're just the Gentiles who come into covenant, whoever we are. Okay, Yehovah is a set-apart place, is a temple for us. We are the body of Mashiach. Therefore say, thus said the Master Yehovah, and I shall gather you from the people, and I shall assemble you from the lands where you've been scattered, and I shall give you the land of Israel. And they shall go there, and they shall take away all its disgusting matters and all its abominations from there. That's what's going to be in the land of Israel when we're taken back there, the people who are submitted to him. All its disgusting matters, all of its abominations, which is exactly what you find there today. This is not to cast aspersions on all of the people that you find in the land of Israel. I'm sure loads of them are lovely. I'm sure loads of them think that they're seeking after Yehovah in their own way. It's not about the people. It's about the things that are being done, which are categorically wrong according to Scripture. And I shall give them one heart and put a new spirit within you. And I shall take the stony heart out of their flesh and give them a heart of flesh, so that they walk in my laws and guard my judgments and shall do them, and they shall be my people, and I shall be their Elohim. But to those whose hearts walk after the heart of their disgusting matters and their abominations, I shall recompense their deeds on their own heads, declares the Master Yehovah. And the cherubim lifted up their wings with the wheels beside them, and the esteem of the Elohim of Yisrael was high above them. And the esteem of Yehovah went up from the midst of the city and stood upon the mountain which is on the east side of the city. Jeremiah 33 tells us when all of this comes to a head, when the return happens, when the temple will be reestablished. See, the days are coming, declares Yehovah, when I shall establish the good word which I have promised to the house of Israel and to the house of Yehudah. It happens at the same time. They're brought back to the land at the same time. In those days and at that time, I cause a branch of righteousness to spring forth for David. He shall do judgment and righteousness in the earth. In those days, Yehudah shall be saved, and Yerushalayim dwell in safety. This is that which shall be proclaimed to her. Yehovah, our righteousness. For thus said Yehovah, for David there is not to cease a man to sit on the throne of the house of Israel. This is when this good word which is spoken to them will be fulfilled, when Yeshua will rule and reign on the earth in Yerushalayim. And for the priests, the Levites, there is not to cease a man to offer burnt offerings before me, to kindle mincha, and to sacrifice continually. This is when the temple is coming back. This is when it's prophesied. Not now, because a load of people have decided. Do you think if we all got together and went and got a load of wood and built a little house and told Yehovah to come and dwell in it, he would? It's nonsense. The word of Yehovah came to Yirmiyahu saying, thus said Yehovah, if you could break my covenant with the day and my covenant with the night, so that there be not day and night in their season, then my covenant could also be broken with David my servant, so that he shall not have a son to reign upon his throne, and with the Levites, the priests, my attendants. He's got a covenant with them. They're coming back. As the host of the heavens is not counted, nor the sand of the sea measured, so I increase the descendants of David my servant, and the Levites who attend upon me. Isaiah 66, 20-22 gives us some more details about how this process is going to happen. They shall bring in all your brothers as an offering to Yehovah out of all the Gentiles, on horses and in chariots and in litters, on mules and on camels, to my set-apart mountain Yerushalayim, declares Yehovah, as the children of Yisrael bring an offering in a clean vessel into the house of Yehovah. And from them too I shall take for priests, for Levites, declares Yehovah. For as the new heavens and the new earth that I make to stand before me, declares Yehovah, so your seed and your name shall stand. So in this time of reformation of the Levitical service, this time of regeneration, as Yeshua called it, when everything is made new, that's when the temple is built. It shall be that from Chodesh to Chodesh and from Shabbat to Shabbat, all flesh shall come to worship in my presence, declares Yehovah. Hebrews 9, 8-10 says, the set-apart spirit signifying this. Okay, when all of the things are in the order that they are on Yom Kippur, this is what the set-apart spirit, the Holy Spirit, is signifying, that the high priest can only enter in once a year. That the way into the most set-apart place has not yet been made manifest, while the first tabernacle has a standing. And when it says the first tabernacle, it doesn't mean the one in the wilderness. In context, if you read it, the first tabernacle it describes is the one that's outside the Holy of Holies. And the other one is the one that's through the second veil. That would be the second tabernacle, so to speak, which is a parable for the present time. So the Holy of Holies being in the midst of the tabernacle, that tabernacle is a parable for the present time, in which both gifts and sacrifices are offered, which are unable to perfect the one serving as to his conscience. And we'll see this as we look at the book of Hebrews. It's one of the aspects that the book of Hebrews brings out, that the temple that was on the earth couldn't perfect anyone, because their consciences were still defiled before Yehovah. They'd sinned, they came and they offered the appropriate thing, but their consciences were still defiled. They'd still sinned against Yehovah. So they could not be made perfect as pertains to their conscience. Only as to food and drinks and different washings and fleshly regulations. That's the only thing it could make them perfect in regard to. Imposed until, it says, a time of reformation. The Christian church will teach that this time of reformation was after Yeshua. They've got no scriptural founding for this at all. But that's just what they'll say. It makes sense to them. Of course, everything was reformed after Yeshua. The law was done away with, this, that, and the other. We're all under grace now and not under the law. So it kind of makes sense to them. But if we look at the word for reformation, it's this, diorthosis. And it means, in this context, the reformation of acts and institutions. And in the context of Hebrews, the thing that's being reformed is the Levitical service, is the temple service. Okay, so where do we find in Scripture that the temple service will be reformed? You'll notice also in Hebrews, it says the present time that gifts and sacrifices are offered. And Paul did go to the temple and offer a sacrifice. Okay, makes you perfect in regard to all of these, and they will all stand until this time of reformation. Ezekiel 40, 45 to 46, and I recommend very strongly that everyone goes home and reads Ezekiel 40 through 48, because that describes perfectly for you this time of reformation. It describes the millennium for you, the time of regeneration, as Yeshua called it. Verse 45 says, "And he said to me, this room facing south is for the priests who guard the duty of the house." Notice that Ezekiel is shown a pattern for the temple by the Spirit. This is the next temple that we will see. "And the room facing north is for the priests who guard the duty of the altar. They are the sons of Zadok." Okay, the sons of Zadok were a particular lineage from within the sons of Aaron. To be a Levite, you had to be a descendant of Aaron, basically. All throughout history, you had to be a descendant of Aaron. In the time of Reformation, when this is all reformed, you have to be a son of Zadok in particular. From the tribes of Levi, who draw near to Yehovah to serve him. Hosea 3, 3-5 describes the current time. Okay, remember that Hosea was to take a wife who was a prostitute. And he's speaking to his wife here. "I said to her, you are to remain with me many days, and you are not to whore to become any man's, so I shall also be with you. For many days the children of Israel are to remain without king, without prince, without sacrifice, without pillar, without the shoulder garment of Aharon the high priest, or house idols." And the word is teraphim. We don't really know what that word means, but let's just go with house idols for now. But we're to be without sacrifice for that period of time, until the time of Reformation, when it's the sons of Zadok serving in the temple. "Afterward, the children of Israel shall return and shall seek Yehovah their Elohim and David their king, and fear Yehovah and his goodness in the latter days." Okay, so they'll return after this period where they don't have any sacrifice. And they'll return and they'll fear Yehovah. And I think we're beginning to see the beginnings of that return. People certainly don't shema the word of Yehovah. They don't fear Yehovah now. They just kind of do religious things. Some people do. There's always been a remnant. And if you're one of them, then that's really good. But the children of Israel shall return. They'll seek Yehovah in the latter days. But notice, at that point, there is no sacrifice. There will not be until he returns.